Okay, let's unpack this. You sent over a film review for Havoc, right? The new Netflix action thriller.
Yeah, that's the one. Gareth Evans directing.
Exactly, the guy behind the Raid films. Big reputation there. So you're a fan, and the mission for us here is to really dig into this review.
Right, see what it tells us about what to expect. Is it classic Evans or something different?
Yeah, figure out what kind of ride Havoc is going to be. Does it live up to the hype? What's the action like? Is there, more to it?
You want the key insights, basically. Help you decide if it's worth the time.
That's it. The crucial details, minus the fluff. So let's dive in. What jumps out first from this review?
Well, straight away, it frames Havoc against the Raid and the Raid 2, his big successes.
It's a high bar then.
A very high bar. Those films are known for incredibly intense, really detailed action choreography. So the review uses that as the benchmark.
Okay, so the big question is, does Havoc measure up, according to this critic? Or is it a departure?
Well, it seems like maybe a bit of both, actually. The review definitely points to a shift in style.
Shift how?
It reminds us that his earlier stuff was all about precision choreography, relentless pacing, and crucially, characters whose pain felt real. You felt every hit.
Right, I remember that visceral feel. So what's different here?
Havoc is described as louder, bloodier, and more over the top.
Louder, bloodier, over the top. Okay, that sounds intense, but maybe different intense.
Exactly. So what does that shift mean? Is he going for a different kind of impact now? Less grounded, maybe more spectacle?
That's the key, isn't it? Does louder and bloodier mean better or just different?
Well, sometimes that kind of shift can aim for, a broader audience, more explosions, less intricate fighting, maybe.
Like trading surgical precision for just sheer volume.
Kind of, yeah. That's a good way to put it. One might look flashier, but maybe doesn't have that same kind of lasting impact. The reviewer seems to be hinting at that trade-off.
Okay, so potentially less of that grounded feeling from the earlier films.
That seems to be the implication. Amplified gore, maybe, but perhaps less realism.
The review uses some really striking language for the action itself. It mentions gunfights that spiral into full-blown ballistic ballets.
Ballistic ballets, yeah. That's quite a phrase.
It is. What does that suggest to you? Less gritty, more stylized.
Definitely stylized. It sounds like the violence is almost like choreographed like a dance. Very visual, very planned. Maybe less about the chaos of a real gunfight and more about the aesthetic.
Okay. And the settings. It mentions fights in claustrophobic hallways, hospital rooms, abandoned buildings, and wide open streets. Lots of variety.
Yeah, that variety is interesting. Each setting demands a different kind of action, right? Tight spaces versus open areas that could keep things visually dynamic if it's handled well.
But there's one specific moment the review flags is really jarring. Something about a comatose patient getting hit. Yes.
Riddled with bullets was the phrase, I think.
Wow, okay. Why highlight that? What does that signal about the violence?
Well, it suggests they're really pushing the envelope. Hitting a defenseless person like that, it's designed to shock.
Right, it implies a certain level of brutality, maybe even gratuitousness.
Could be. The reviewer calling it jarring suggests it stands out even in a violent film. Maybe it felt excessive or just unnecessarily grim. It definitely points towards a very hard edge.
And the visual style seems to lean into that too. Slow motion sprays of blood. We see that a lot.
You do. It's a technique to emphasize the impact, make it visually striking.
But how does the reviewer seem to feel about it here? Is it effective or?
The tone suggests maybe it's overused, or perhaps it contributes to that feeling of being over the top. When you aestheticize violence too much with slow-mo, it can, sometimes feel less real.
Less impactful, ironically.
Potentially, yeah. Or just desensitizing. It becomes more about the visual effect than the consequence.
Okay, moving on from the action specifics. The setting itself gets some criticism. It's described as a dark, stylized, CGI-infused, Gotham-esque metropolis.
Right, filmed in Cardiff, but heavily enhanced digitally.
But it feels oddly hollow, according to the review. Why is the setting so important, and what does overly artificial mean in this context?
Well, the world the action happens in is crucial, right? It sets the mood, the stakes. If it feels fake, like a video game backdrop,
it pulls you out of it.
Exactly. It can make everything feel less real, less dangerous. If the city feels hollow or artificial because of too much CGI, it might lack that lived-in, gritty texture that makes action feel grounded.
Especially compared to, say, the apartment block in The Raid. That felt incredibly real and threatening.
Precisely. That setting was practically a character itself. This sounds like it might be more set dressing, and maybe not entirely convincing set dressing at that.
Okay, let's talk characters. Tom Hardy plays the lead, Detective Walker. Grizzled, disillusioned cop. We've seen that type before.
A classic archetype, yeah. The review adds he has this wheezy, nasal, almost Cagney-esque growl.
Huh. That's specific. Does this kind of stylized performance fit with the over-the-top action the reviewer described?
That's the question, isn't it? It could work, grounding the film in a familiar noir-ish vibe, or it could feel a bit tacked on, maybe slightly out of place if the world itself feels artificial.
Depends on the execution, I guess.
Totally. Then there's Forrest Whitaker as Lawrence Beaumont, a corrupt politician.
And his son, Charlie, is apparently key to the plot kicking off.
Right. Charlie, played by Justin Cornwell, he's described as wayward. Seems he gets involved in something bad, allegedly kills the son of the gang boss.
Ah, so he's the catalyst. His actions set everything in motion. Walker has to get him back.
Pretty much. Walker gets coerced into finding Charlie, and that throws him into this whole mess between crooked cops and merciless triads, revenge, retribution, the whole deal.
We also get Jessie Neely as Ellie, a bright, principled rookie officer.
The counterpoint, maybe? The moral compass?
Seems like it. Provides a contrast to all the corruption. And then Timothy Olyphant is in it too.
Yeah, as Vincent, a sadistic and power-hungry cop.
Okay, so he sounds like a straight-up villain. Olyphant usually brings a certain menace.
He does. So you've got the grizzled hero, the corrupt politician, the wayward son, the principled rookie, the sadistic villain. It sounds like the characters might lean heavily on archetypes.
Which brings us to the plot itself. Walker has to get the son back, gets caught in the middle of this gang war. How does the reviewer feel about the story overall? Does it hold up?
Maybe not entirely. The review uses the word convoluted.
Increasingly convoluted, I think. Not a great sign.
No, it's just the plot might get overly complicated, perhaps without adding much real depth. The reviewer even says the action moments are buried under this plot.
So the story isn't necessarily enhancing the action, it might actually be getting in the way.
That seems to be the criticism. It provides the setup, sure, but maybe doesn't deliver a compelling narrative thread to tie all the mayhem together effectively.
This feels like the core issue the reviewer has then. They acknowledge flashes of his former magic, these moments of thrilling breakneck intensity.
Yeah, so Evans can still clearly direct action. Those moments are there.
But they're buried, and the characters rarely rise beyond their archetypes. So what's missing compared to The Raid?
It sounds like the substance underneath the style. The reviewer explicitly mentions there's little left to hold on to emotionally.
And that matters, right? Even in an action film, that emotional connection.
Absolutely. Think about The Raid again. You cared about Rama, his mission, the danger he was in. It wasn't just watching fights, you were invested.
So without that connection, the action, no matter how spectacular, can feel empty.
Or just exhausting, as the reviewer puts it. If you don't care about why the punches are being thrown, it just becomes noise after a while. That emotional weight grounds the spectacle.
Okay, so summing it all up, who is this film actually for, according to the review?
Well, it says it might appeal to die-hard action fans or admirers of Evans's visual flair, people who are there primarily for the spectacle.
But if you're looking for more, like character depth, emotional connection, a story that resonates.
Then the review suggests Havoc might feel more exhausting than exhilarating. It might leave you cold.
So the key takeaway for you, deciding whether to watch, is really about managing expectations.
Exactly. Know what you're getting into. This sounds like Evans leaning into a bigger, louder, maybe less refined style of action filmmaking. Pure visual assault over perhaps narrative depth or character investment.
So based on our deep dive into this Havoc review, it really sounds like a film delivering that Gareth Evans visual punch, that chaotic action.
Definitely seems to have that, but maybe at a cost.
Yeah, potentially losing some of the tighter storytelling, the grounded feel, the emotional core of his earlier work.
The review points to really intense, maybe excessive violence, that slightly unconvincing CGI world, and characters who, might feel a bit thin despite the actors.
But if what you want is just a nonstop barrage of action, and you're less worried about the plot making perfect sense or connecting deeply with the characters,
then maybe Havoc still delivers that adrenaline rush. It sounds like a clear shift towards a more bombastic style for Evans.
It definitely leaves you with a question, doesn't it? For your own viewing habits. Is that pure, unadulterated action enough on its own? Or do you need that story, that character connection, to really feel thrilled?
That's the bottom line. Perhaps after you watch it, you'll have a clearer sense of where you land on that yourself.